right, what's up, guys? We are here live. Sorry for the delay. Life happens. Thanks for joining us here for Movers and Shakers Unlimited for this edition. I'm happy to have a special guest with us today. As you saw in the subject, we will be talking about how cons have been affected by social distancing. So who I have here to join me to discuss that is Eli Montoya. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Well, I'm here. I'm moving. I'm shaking. I don't know if my movement and shaking can be unlimited, but I will try for you. So, like the whole time, I'll just keep a steady, groove. I'm just kidding. That'd be a bit too much. Man, it's good. The world's kind of crazy and changing, and really different for a lot of people out there in the world, especially a lot of the people that we're kind of familiar with in the con world, whether it's cosplayers or artists or the celebrities themselves or the vendors. A lot of things are changing. So it's good for me. I'm safe. I'm happy. I'm well, but I do have concerns for the rest of everyone out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. So let's just hit the ground running. I felt, I guess, the easiest way to kind of go about this and discuss this topic is to break things down based on, I guess, seasonally what we see with a lot of cons. I don't know how it was for you at the beginning of this year, but unbeknownst of how the rest of this year was going to go, the last con that I was able to attend in person was C2E2. So I figured I would start off with a lot of our spring cons, because I feel like in terms of what we saw with that trend, a lot of it immediately impacted, those cons upon that, that time of the year. So with that being said, I know a lot of them kind of fell by, fell like dominoes during that time, because there was a lot of, there was a lot unknown at that time. And we were just getting into that trend or that what we were seeing in society, where a lot of things were being shut down and a lot of governments were asking everyone to stay in. So how about you? I mean, I know it was probably a little different going into the new year, what the expectations were and what you expected you would be doing.
Because I've worked, and just to kind of give a quick little background, I've worked for over 10 years in the convention industry, whether it was board game conventions, comic cons, game festivals. I've kind of done them all. I've been a volunteer, I've been a manager, I've been a director of departments, whether it was for events, for after parties, for just different areas. And heading into this year, the first con, like you kind of mentioned, I actually didn't get to attend one this year. We were about 2 weeks out from ACE in Boston happening, and then that one was one of the ones that got canceled, right when the real shutdown started to happen. So I haven't been to one. And then the ones that I would have attended, would have worked for, would have helped out at, or the ones that would have been on my radar, a lot of those have all been already canceled. And then I think this was kind of an interesting inflection point just for the industry, and just to kind of liken it to movies just a little bit. People had always talked about how that movie bubble was going to burst, whether it was going to be can the blockbusters sustain, these movies? Is Marvel and Disney really just propping up this movie industry right now? I feel like it was kind of like that with the con industry too, because there were so many shows popping up that hey, can all these shows survive in all of these areas? There was just a lot of conventions happening all at once. And then now with the shutdown, I feel like it's when we do come back in full, maybe that's a year from now, a year and a half, who knows, when you'll want to be around that many people again. But I do think that some shows might not come back. You might see some new shows rise up from those ashes, and it's really sad that maybe those shows don't come back. But you'll see a lot of new things come up, because I think it's forcing a lot of the smart businesses to pivot to digital, or to at least embrace that culture a little bit more. You're seeing, of course, San Diego do Con at Home, and a lot of people have a digital presence. But I mean, for me, it was I kind of started off just at the beginning when we started talking. It was sad to see so many of the people whose livelihoods depended on it, whether it was the independent artists, the cosplayers, a lot of the hobbyists who might have been just pushing to that, being able to quit their job as a bartender or a waiter or something like that, where now they're set back, way back. And this could have been any of the hobbyists, or any of the artists, or even vendors too, that were really kind of starting to have a real business model. So I've always been kind of trying to get influence or get my friends to pivot to digital, and that a lot of the tools are free and easy to use. You just got to learn them in Google. And it's just, even what we're doing right now, this video conferencing thing, Zooms and things like this weren't something that people were checking for months ago, and now it's like the new currency. Like, well, my mom's on a conference call with like 4 people, and they're getting tipsy and yelling at each other. I'm like, the world has changed, man. Like, it's really changed.
Absolutely, man. And it's funny you should bring that up in terms of like all the logistics that go into it, and how we've seen a pivot in how not just how cons are being executed now, of taking advantage of the technology that we have now, but it's going to be interesting to see going forward what that's going to look like. Where are we going to see, like you say, are we going to see more of this? But you did mention San Diego at home, San Diego Comic-Con at home, and that's actually a great segue into a lot of the summer cons. A lot of the summer cons were, even though, they were at the time when we were starting to see a lot of these closures, they were months out. We were starting to see a lot of them become casualties, of social distancing. And it's interesting because you hear, you don't really, for those that are not really privy to that information or aware of it, that are just going, for fun as attendees, I understand, at least on the business side, a lot of folks were wondering why a lot of these, why a lot of these cons were waiting so long, and people kind of underestimate how much of an undertaking. I know this because you work behind the scenes with these events, but they underestimate how much of an undertaking putting together a con is, and how many logistics and how many moving parts there are. I mean, just like you said, in terms of, whether you have volunteers, whether you have employees, with people who actually, make their living, that's their job, goes into that. And, the folks that put on these cons, a lot goes into play in terms of, logistically, legally, what you're dealing with, how many rooms you're blocking off. And there's a lot that goes into that. So maybe in their heart, maybe they already know that they're not going to, put on a show, but they have to, wait and kind of work out all the logistical things behind the scenes to kind of confirm those things without it being, a major headache. So.
Yeah, well, and I like I said initially, I'm worried just because, these are a lot of my friends' livelihoods, a lot of their passion, like the things that brought them joy, seeing their friends, that was their vacation for the year, what they would save up for. And like even speaking to the fans, this was their, maybe escape from their 9 to 5 and things like that. And that's gone away, which really sucks. But another like just huge piece of this is like, I just think personally, and then I don't have any, insider knowledge on the celebrities thinking either. But if I was someone who's on a Netflix show, like maybe someone from Umbrella Academy, would I want to endanger my future earnings potential or my ability to film scenes by going to a convention with 30,000 people who I don't know if they're washing their hands, singing those ABCs twice, if they're, wearing a mask? It's kind of weird because like I love basketball. I'm wearing my Celtics
basketball.
Yeah. So I got my Celtics headphones right now, but like I can't think. I was like, how many fans would be in an arena for me to feel okay going to a basketball game? And like, I'm like just thinking about it. I was like, you won't catch me at a basketball game for like, until there's a vaccine. Like, it's one of those things of like, and at a basketball game, there is more ways to control people touching you in like the arena space than there is at a con. At a con, when you're going down those hallways, you're touching the same merchandise as people. And just to bring it back to the celebrity angle, if you're a celebrity and like I said, endangering your earning potential and things like that, like, would you want to go to a con to take a photo op or to sign autographs with people? Like, because in pictures, you see the con pictures of people like hugging Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth. Like, that's the whole thing. They're just like, I hug Thor. Yes, this is the best. And I can't imagine that being something that's allowed going forward. So maybe it's 2 to 3 years out where it comes back, but I can't see that happen.
I was going to say, and it's interesting too that you bring that up because I was just talking to a friend of mine, Dan Parent. I was talked to him last week, who does Archie Comics, and he was going to be doing Tampa Bay Comic-Con, which actually just recently canceled. It's supposed to be happening next month. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more that even though right now they are currently listed as still happening, we'll probably see them start to, announce that they're going to be canceling for this year. But, at that point, when I was talking to him about like logistics of how everything's going to work, just like you said, there's so many elements that go into play at a con where the expectation is that when you see a specific guest that's there, or you're there to see a specific guest, the expectation is you're doing a photo op, so you're going to be right next to them. You're going up for autograph, you're going to be right next to them.
You can talk to them.
You're going to talk to them, so you're going to be right next to them. So I was like, okay, how is that going to work? How did they discuss that with you? And at the time, before they made this announcement, apparently is they were, from what I understand, from what he explained to me, is that they were going to have perhaps people still at a distance, and they were still going to do their selfies at a distance, which I don't know. Like, I would rather
they're like photobombing you.
Right there, right? Like it would be so weird. I would rather be right there versus like having the person like waving like 6 feet away.
Yeah, and that's
why you're doing it.
And that's the thing.
Not the same. The experience.
So. No, and that's the thing with the earnings potential. So, if a photo op for someone was $100 to get a picture with them, but at social distancing space at, the 6 feet away, is it 75? Is it 8? Like what's the I can't physically touch Superman discount? Like what is, like I can't squeeze the Henry Cavill peck. Like what is the discount on that? Like, and I don't think it's right now just a safe decision to do a con. It just doesn't seem like that, but we'll see. I mean, it's really
it'll be interesting because let's be honest. I'm going to be a little transparent. Is that we could be honest that when it comes to cons, there is a saying known as con crud, where we know that we have folks there. I love you guys. I love you guys out there, but there's some of you out there that don't use, the necessary tools for good hygiene. It's just the reality. So, just considering the natural trend that you have anyway, even in your utmost effort in trying to ensure people's safety, I think that it's just the best idea just to, wait till we have a vaccine and hold off for a year. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I mean,
well, and I think about the people who I work with behind the scenes and how impossible trying to figure this out has to be. So Disney, or a lot of people like, Reed Pop, they've delayed a lot of their things already to 2021. So We're not seeing Star Wars Celebration again until, a lot of the I wouldn't say like the heaviest hitters have already punted down the field, and there's a lot of the other businesses that they rely on these conventions to fund their shows. So I think that they're having a harder time because they might not have the war chest that some of these other conventions might have. But I think you're going to see, like I said, just a different convention world. Hopefully, 18 months from now or sooner. But who like we have no real answer because there is no, like as much science as there's out there, there's no definitive answer just yet. Like we don't even know if you already had it, if you can give it to someone again, like all that stuff. So it's the thing where like, if like you cough, you're like, oh my gosh, do I have, like, you have to just worry about that stuff. But I think something that, like I kind of mentioned before, that I'm really passionate about is just the ways that you can pivot, the skill sets that you have. Whether you're an artist, you can start reaching out to video game companies about doing concept art or indie dev. And like, there's other ways to hustle and grind and find those, those side hustles for you. For me, I had done so much social media stuff in the past, and I realized that, that's social media and marketing, that's community management. So that's kind of what I've pivoted into. Yeah, the same. Yeah. So basically, like my thing is that I've been helping an independent game developer run his social media. I've been doing podcasts. I've been writing more. So I would say that even though from a career standpoint, it's been disappointing to not have the conventions and to keep that growth going and to keep making more connections and keep making the fans smile and have the fun and all that stuff. It has been an creativity explosion for me, because I think last week I was on 3 podcasts, 2 video game podcasts that I produce and edit, and then another one that's like an improv podcast where we didn't know who we were beforehand, and it was like it was great. Like I just got a character sheet right before the podcast, and we were doing like this. We were part of the pro archery league, and I was like the Tom Brady of archers, and so like I'm referring to myself in the third person, and we were just like having this ball. It's this podcast Unreal thing, and it's like it's all fake all the time with improvers, and it was like a blast. So yeah, I think the important thing is just connect with the people in your community. People have the free time. They want to collaborate. Just like, don't be afraid to reach out to, even if it's like a streamer or someone you respect, like, hey, I have this talent. I am an animator. I'm a songwriter. Like I made this thing for you, or I'd like to make a thing with you. Because I think now more than ever, people are eager for that collaboration and connection. And like I've been playing more multiplayer games online with my friends because I can't go see them in person. So it's kind of like this thing where you kind of like have to figure out, hey, what's the skill I have? What's something I'm passionate about, and how can I like take that, internalize it, and like it's a lightning bolt coming from Azula and like shoot it back like at everyone. Like, how do I do that?
Definitely. It's funny you should say that, because in lieu of everything that's happened, there's opportunities more than ever to touch base with a lot of folks that you admire, to speak with a lot of folks, to collaborate on a lot of things, because either A, people are at home, or B, in terms of what we're doing now, a lot of folks need something else to focus their attention on. So I absolutely, I agree with you. So with that in mind, pivot a bit. No, we were just talking about summer cons. We will delve into winter cons. There are some events like we were just mentioning that have delayed their events. They haven't canceled their events to next year, but they delayed them to later in the year. We have one that's here locally, Awesome Con. Typically they're in the spring, but they will be happening in December. But in lieu of everything that's happening and still seeing cons fall by the wayside, it will be very interesting to see not just the cons that have rescheduled, but those that are definitive winter cons. So like your New York Comic Cons, to see what they do, because let's be honest, when it comes to a lot of our larger cons, a lot of the smaller events look to those cons to set the example, just like it could be in any other situation. We were just talking basketball. NBA set the example. So in terms of for other sports that are out there, I feel like they basically set the example of, okay, this is how we should respond, or this is how you should respond potentially in your given sport, and how you should handle not only how whether you should end the entire season, or if you should delay it and figure out an alternative, like what we're seeing with the NBA now. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that we might see a lot of what's happening now as we're edging closer to as we're heading further into summer? Perhaps we'll see some of those cons bite the bullet and just move to next year, or perhaps they'll have some disclaimer in place in terms of how they're planning to execute those shows. And if so, what do you think would be some solutions?
Yeah, I think that like typically like right before, maybe the week before Thanksgiving is when the con season kind of ends. You don't see a lot of conventions in December, and I think the con season kind of picks back up like right after Valentine's Day. I would consider like that Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day kind of almost the off season. There are a few shows here and there in that window, but I would say like the main, like what the industry would consider con season, and it's like just that 4-month vacation. So I think it's really interesting, one, that people are pushing to that blank window, and this, to go back to movies again, like releasing a movie in February or in January, those used to be the dead months where studios you're dumping this essentially. So I wonder if a con doing the same thing, because I don't like, if I was managing the business, I wouldn't say do a con in December. That would seem scary to me, just with people saving money for Christmas and the holidays and just maybe the snow that could happen. That worries me. But I do also see that there's like two sides of this coin, where either the first con that happens after the shutdown, and it's like the first con that people get to go to, that one might see like a boon in ticket sales because it's the first one that people get to go to again. Or if they're too early, it could be the con that people just don't go to. And it's that thing where like, if people there's all these events where people are like, hey, we're supposed to have this many thousand people. And then no one shows up because there are people who are scared. There's people who's going to show up with masks, without masks. Like, you don't know, because you can't control who's, like we kind of talked about with the hygiene, who's washing their hands, because at a con, there's so many surfaces, whether it's where you're eating, your walking rails, the door handles for panel rooms, or wherever you're going. So there's things where there's some overreaction to the, being safe, but like, I would rather be overprotective of myself, my family members, and the people in my life than I would rather be overly cautious than to harm someone. So that's just my perspective. And I know everyone's looking at different facts, different science, all that stuff, but it is an issue. Like you kind of presented, it's a who's going to pull the trigger first, I think is very interesting. And how much of a success or failure it is very interesting too. Because like I said, you could see a spike in sales because they're the first con that we've had in 10 months, or you could see a drop off because no one wants to be around other human beings like that. So there's, I can see both. And it's like that like waiting game. And the hardest thing about scheduling a convention, kind of like you brought up before, is how many moving parts are in the background. You just can't go to a convention center and say, we're going to be this week. Just kidding. Now we're going to go 2 weeks later because there's a vaccine 2 months from now. Like, you can't. You're signing contracts. There's not like
regulations. I mean, we were just talking about artists. You have artists that are delivering their product to to the con, so that way they're ready to set it up once the con starts. Like, and it's not just the artists. You have the other vendors. In the case of like a San Diego, you have major studios that are dropping off tons and tons of merch. So yeah, it's fascinating. I'm very fascinated to see if it does come to fruition, we still end up having those events.
Look, if there are any like con people watching this, just remember that like it's those tiny little things that you can forget. Everything's going to take longer. Your printer, your delivery, your like everything that you do, like add 2 weeks to it, or 3 weeks, or like 4. Like, be extra careful and cautious when you're doing this stuff, because a lot of people's savings or their cushion is running out, and you got to be really smart about this stuff right now.
And I mean, it's going to be running slower anyway, because a lot of businesses are not running at 100%, just to make sure that they are following social distancing protocols. So, you're still going to be at a disadvantage, however way you look at it. So it'll be interesting indeed. I'll cut it off there. Eli, thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. Can you tell folks where they can find your work, man?
Yeah, right now, projectnerd.com. I'm writing a ton of stuff. I review TV shows, movies, games. Just put up my Last of Us Part 2 review, and that game is delightful and scary and also tragic. So check it out. There's a spoiler and non-spoiler section of the review, so you can kind of read and enjoy both parts. I am on a video game podcast called the Game Pitch Podcast, and every week we pitch a new video game, which I think is really unique and fun. So we come up with a video game, and sometimes it's the dumbest stuff that's just pun-based, and other times it's like a real game that should exist. So it's very fun. You can find us on Twitter at Game Pitch Pod. We're on Spotify and Google and Apple, Game Pitch Pod, one word. And then other than that, I'm just on Twitter at Mario RPGino. I'm on Instagram. I post a lot of colorful, bright stuff because there's so much sadness and darkness in the world sometimes. So I'm just like, oh man, look at this picture of Kirby with a spaghetti hat. He's adorable. So that's my jam.
There you go. Again, thanks to Eli. I'm Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movies and Shakers Unlimited. Find us on Twitter, Move and Shake UNLTD. Instagram, Move and Shakers Unlimited. Find me, Brandon Choi, right there, the handle, Brandon Choi ENT. We also have Eli's handle there for Twitter. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys soon. Later. Bye.